present, the witness is back on the witness stand, and Mr. Rodriguez, you may continue your examination.
So, in reviewing the bank records that you had for the defendant, did you categorize those in any way?
Yes, I did.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as exhibits 870 and 872, and ask you if you recognize those two exhibits.
Yes, I've prepared both of these.
Okay, and so I'm not going to go through in great detail on these. Are these just starting with 872? We have an 18-page document here. Can you tell us what that is?
That lists out the transactions in the bank account ending 7966. This will be similar to perhaps if you keep a checkbook where you would list out all the deposits coming in and all the disbursements going out along with the date and the amount. This is very similar to that.
So is this, in essence, just a summary of the bank account?
Yes, it lists out all the detail of the bank account transactions.
Okay.
I'm sorry, is that the checking or savings?
This one's the check.
Okay, and tell us what information, you indicated it would be similar to a checkbook, so tell us what information we're actually seeing on here.
Okay, looking at the column headings, I have a row number.
I think there's a laser pointer there if you want to use it.
Oh, thank you, Your Honor.
Can you understand?
Yeah, sure.
Am I blocking your?
No, you're fine.
So up here I have a row number. That's just my number so that we could talk about transactions referring to a line number. Then I have the date that it was posted to the bank statement, this transaction. And then I have a description about the transaction. And then a little more description if there is a secondary description, then it's also here. And then if there's any comments, such as on a check, there might be something in the memo section that would be in here, or if there is some notation as to a debit card transaction and it gave some detail, then I might have that also in this column. And then again, this is having to do with more information that's listed on a check or on a debit card statement transaction. And then credit is money going into the account, so that would be a deposit. And then debit is money coming out of the account, which could be debit card transactions, it could be withdrawals, it could be fees. So those would all be in the debit column. And then the balance is just keeping the running balance in the account. And to learn what the daily balance is, one would look at the date column, and for instance here on January 23rd, 2009, there are several transactions. If we come down to line 12, that's the last transaction for that date. And then coming over and we see the balance is $1,293.81. So that would be the closing balance for that date. And that's how it would run for all these transactions.
Now, in the description or vendor, we see some numbers, starting with the number of 95, and then we see a 96. What do those denote?
Okay, you're referring to here on line 3, number 95, and that is a check that was posted to the account on January 20th of 2009. And I don't have information about that check, so that's why there are a lot of blanks in here. But I do know that the check cleared for the amount of $1,400.
And in reviewing the Union Bank accounts that you received, did you receive any copies of who those checks were actually made out to?
No, I did not.
So are you able to tell us, if you look at this particular transaction where it says check 95 and there's no comment or city, you can't tell where it was cashed, is that right?
Correct. I don't know who it was paid to.
Okay, so that could even be a check that you just wrote for cash, is that also correct?
Objection, call speculator.
Sustained.
You can put your name, in order to cash a check, you can put your own name or write a check to cash, is that right?
Objection, I'll withdraw.
You can answer.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, so you can't give us any information in terms of the person those checks were made out to, right?
Correct.
Okay. So this goes all the way from January 20th, 2009, and then like moving on to page 3 of that, we see this blue line that goes through the middle. Can you describe for us what that is?
Okay, I used the ending balance. I put that in blue. And actually, that reminds me of earlier I had stated that I used the month-end balance when I was making that chart showing the combined balances.
Okay.
Now I recall that I used the ending balance for that month. So this statement ended on February 5th, so this would have been the February balance.
Of 2009.
Right, right. So I've highlighted in blue the month-end balance for each of these months. So we'll see as we go through page by page that probably the next blue line will be around March 5th.
The end of the bank statement period then?
Yes.
Okay. And so moving on to page 4, you see line 144. Can you detail what that is then?
Okay. That again is the ending balance. The statement ended March 5th of 2009 and it indicated a balance of $274.90.
Okay. And then on page 7 of 18, if you can describe for us that.
Are you referring to line 224?
Yes, I'm sorry, line 224.
Okay. So in this month, the statement ended on April 6th of 2009. And so I've highlighted in blue that date as well as the balance of $2.79.
And then on page 9 of 18, line 331, you can describe that?
The statement ended on May 6th of 2009, and there is a negative balance. It's negative $208.50.
So anytime we see those parentheses around a number, does that indicate that it is a negative balance?
Yes.
Okay. And then moving on to page 11 of 18, if you could tell us about line 392.
So the statement for this month ended on June 4th, 2009, and following across, we see that the balance is a negative $706.16.
Okay, and we see a transaction on line 375 where you have some comments in there. If you could explain what that is to us.
Okay. So on 375, there's a transaction dated May 26, 2009. It's a withdrawal. And then I put in parentheses that it appears to be a cashier's check purchase based on the fee date. So what that means is, first of all, my abbreviation for cashier's check is C/CK. And there are fees that are paid around this time that had to do with cashier's check purchase. So the line right above it, 374, indicates that there was a cashier's check purchase fee, and that was $8. And so that appears to correlate with this withdrawal. So in my opinion, this appears to be a cashier's check purchase. Mr. Merritt would have withdrawn money from his account to purchase a cashier's check. I don't know who it was made out to, but the amount was $2,350.
Okay. And then moving on to page 13 of 18, if you can describe line 468 for us.
Okay. That is the statement ending July 7th, 2009, and the balance on that date is $11.94.
And then on line 530 of page 15.
Okay, this is the statement ending on August 6th, 2009, and the balance is a negative $238.35.
And on page 17 of,
The line number there. Oh,
you
thank
see
you.
it there?
Now I can see it. It wasn't showing.
Okay.
Okay. That is the statement ending September 8th, 2009, and the balance is $4.69.
And on page 18, line 651.
Okay, this is the statement ending October 7th, 2009, and the ending balance is a negative $388.63.
And then if you can tell us, line 665.
That is the statement ending November 5th, 2009, and the ending balance is 0. Just before that, there was a miscellaneous credit on the account, and that cleared out the balance. It had been a negative $524.63, and then the bank gave a miscellaneous credit. In other words, they put money into the account to zero it out.
Okay, and on that particular last page, between line 651, which has the date of 10/7/09, and line 665, which has the date of 11/5/09, 11/5/09 is the closing of the account, is that correct?
Yes.
And in that particular month, the transactions seem to decrease significantly, would that be correct?
Yes.
And we see these transactions, these pre-authorized Speedy Cash. Are you familiar with Speedy Cash?
Yes, I am.
What is Speedy Cash?
Speedy Cash is a short-term lender. They make what's known as payday loans, which is when people may need some money to carry them over until their next paycheck. So that's a short-term loan. They also make automobile title loans. If someone needed some cash and they wanted to put up their car as collateral, then they could get a loan from Speedy Cash. So
Okay.
the short-term loans, usually with a pretty high rate of interest.
Okay, so we see those pre-authorized debits. Is that something, when it says pre-authorized, that would be set up through the bank ahead of time?
Yes, it's probably an agreement with Speedy Cash that, can you move over the dates so I can see that?
Sure.
So it looks like about every 2 weeks or so, there's a payment to Speedy Cash. So there's probably an agreement that these repayments on some loan that was obtained from Speedy Cash, that those repayments would be every 2 weeks. And there was authorization given to take that out of Mr. Merritt's bank account.
Okay, and since you're standing up already, we'll just move into the Bank of America account. You indicated that this was also a chart that you prepared, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and can you just tell us what we're seeing in this particular account?
So this is the same setup as I just described.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
just for clarification, Exhibit 870. Go ahead.
Okay. This account is this the 2519? I can't see the top.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the same type of setup that I used, same spreadsheet to show the activity in the Bank of America account, which started on February 3rd of 2010, and I said it ended somewhere around May 10th or May 12th of 2010. And my headings are all the same, and the meanings are the same as far as negative balance and all those indications.
Okay, and can you describe for us, this is an account that was opened, is that right? Can you tell us anything about that initial deposit that was made on February 3rd?
If you're referring to line 2,
Yes.
there's a deposit to open up the account, and it's a check from Earth Inspired Products, and it was deposited at the B of A Cucamonga branch, and it's actually a $100 check from Earth Inspired Products and $100 cash, making the opening deposit $200, which is reflected then in the balance of $200.
You indicated that you had also gone through exhibits for the Earth Inspired Products account, is that right?
I looked at bank account information.
Okay. I'm just going to approach you with what's been marked as 420B and tell me if this would be the last page of that exhibit. If you can take a look at that and tell me if that particular item would be consistent with the deposit that you observed on line 2 to open that account.
Yes.
So I'm going to put this up in the middle of that at this point, just to explain to us. This is 420B, and you just had an opportunity to look at this. You indicated that there was a deposit that was made on February 3rd, and there was a $100 check and $100 cash. Is that right?
Yes.
And would this be consistent, check number 1117, would that be consistent with the check that was deposited to open that account?
Yes, we can see that the posting date of this check is 2010, February 3rd. And again, there's more information down in this area where the check is processed. It indicates February 3rd also.
Okay, and then it also says Bank of America, is that right? Right up above that?
Yes.
Okay. So then going back to your exhibit, can you tell us about line 18 on this particular account?
Okay. Line 18 is the ending balance for this first statement. It's on February 9th of 2010, and we can see that the balance is $7,376.50.
Okay, and then moving on to page 3. If you can describe for us what we see on line 92.
Okay. The ending date for this statement was March 15th, 2010, and the balance is $2,137.14.
And then going to page 4 of this exhibit, if you can tell us about line 136.
136 is a statement ending April 14th, 2010, and the balance is $3,310.14.
And then line 144.
This is a balance, the last statement of this account, May 12th, 2010, and the ending balance is 0. Again, this account had a negative balance just before this, and the bank forced the account closed by just doing a credit to the account to zero out the balance.
And can you tell us, I think that's lines 142, 143, that information that you were able to observe from his records?
Okay. On 142, this is a transfer in from another account, and it was to bring money into this account to help satisfy the negative balance. And so that was $4.10, not enough to clear the balance. So then the bank put in $3,227.76 to bring the balance to 0.
And then I want to ask you about a particular transaction on line 34. If you can explain to us what that is.
Line 34 is a transaction on February 19th, 2010, and it's a transfer from Daniel Kavanaugh. The last four digits of the account number are 8279, and this occurred in the gas lamp branch of B of A, and it gives some confirmation number. And it's $5,000 that's being transferred into this account. And since the balance before that was only $7.50, this brought the balance up to $5,007.50.
Okay. And on line 37, do we see another transfer into the account?
Yes, this is a wire transfer in, and it's from M.W. Mitchell Construction. And that too is for $5,000. And now the balance is up to $9,182.50.
Okay, and then on page 2, line 65, if you can describe for us what that is.
This is a transaction on March 5th of 2010. It's a wire into the account, a wire transfer. It's from CoCash Enterprises, and the amount is $13,862. And that, because there was a overdrawn balance before that, this left the account with a balance of $13,820.
Okay. As you went through these bank accounts, did you notice that there was a significant number of fees related with transactions?
Yes, there were a lot of fees.
And when you say there were a lot of fees, what can you tell us about that? What do you mean?
There were a lot of NSF check fees. There were a lot of overdraft fees and what the bank calls continuous overdraft fees. There were a lot of ATM withdrawal fees. There were a lot of balance inquiry fees.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as 875. If you can tell me if you recognize this before we put it on the overhead.
Yes, I prepared this.
Okay. And can you tell us actually what we're looking at here?
So what I've done is I've prepared a schedule listing out the fees. And I have, this covers those three bank accounts, the two at Union Bank plus the Bank of America. And as I said earlier, we didn't have bank statements for a few months in the middle there, from November of 9 into February of 10. So this covers all those months that we do have information on. And I've gone through and I've labeled, well, the fee I got off the bank statement, so I just read that right off. And then I've come up with a label that I call ATM fees for this first section. And these are all fees that pertain to ATM withdrawals. And we can look at the dates and see when these withdrawals are made.
Okay, I want to stop for one moment because you talked a little bit about the three accounts. So I want to show you 871, which I think you identified previously. Just to be clear, what is this?
Okay. This is the savings account ending in 9235 at Union Bank of California. And there's very little activity going on in this account. This is all the transactions that occurred in this whole time period. And there are some service fees, and there's a couple times when there are transfers to the checking account, which is the 7966 account. And eventually the balance gets down to zero.
Okay, so when we talk about, or when you refer to the three accounts, it's really mainly two accounts. You include this one because there's some activity, is that right?
Yes, I don't think there's anything that significant in this account.
Okay, moving back to Exhibit 875, and you had identified a particular number of withdrawals, so all related to ATM fees. So we'll stop at page 5, and if you can explain to us what we see in the middle above the balance inquiry fees.
Okay, so as I said, there were ATM withdrawal fees on all these dates, and I listed them all out. There are 100 of them, and they total $209.
And as you were going through, did you also notice, you indicated that there were some bank inquiry fees that start at the bottom of that page. Do you recall that?
Yes, and these are basically, if you went to the ATM machine to just inquire as to what your balance is, there still is a fee oftentimes. So that's what this would be, is someone who wanted to know what the balance is in their account if they didn't have good record of that.
Okay, and I'm going to move on to page 7 of that exhibit, and if you can tell us what the total of that was.
Okay, so during this time period, there were 42 balance inquiry fees, and they totaled $84.
And what was the next category of items that you described?
Continued overdraft fees, and that's typically charged by the bank if there's a running negative balance over several days. So they might give you a break the first day and maybe charge one kind of fee, maybe an NSF fee if that's what made the balance go negative. But after that, you're going to incur a second kind of fee called a continued overdraft fee. And that's what I've listed out here. Those are $6 a piece here.
Okay. And if you can tell us what we're seeing here at on page 9.
So those continued overdraft fees are, there were 42 of them, and they totaled $252.
And what was the next item of categories that you described?
So this bank, during this time period in 2009, that's Union Bank, and they make a determination whether they want to pay the check, if it's an NSF, or just refuse to pay it. And so they have both of those categories on their bank statements. So here, they labeled these checks as NSF item paid, meaning the bank paid the check. So the receiver of the check doesn't know that it made the account overdrawn. The bank went ahead and paid it, and so they then charge a fee to the account holder for doing that service. And that's what's listed over here is the fees that they charge when the bank did pay the check, even though it cost an overdraft balance.
And you may have said this and I might have missed it, but what does NSF stand for?
That's non-sufficient funds. That means that the bank account could not support payment of that check.
We're showing you page 10 of 12. Can you tell us what the total is for those non-sufficient funds fees?
Okay. Those fees, there were 29 of them, and they totaled $2,226.
And then we see another category. Can you explain to us what that is?
Okay. So this is the counterpart to what I just mentioned with the NSF item paid fee. These are checks that the bank refused to pay on. And so they call them NSF item return fees. And those are posted on as each transaction.
Okay. And can you tell us on page 12 what the total amount and the information is with respect to that?
Okay. So there were 26 times when the bank refused to make payment on the check. and that the total fees that they charged were $898.
Okay, and so you have a report total, can you explain what that means?
So this is all those categories together. I've come up with a total of all those fees. There were 239 of them, and they total amount was $3,669. So there's about a 16 month period that this covers. That's the time period that I noted at the beginning. And these are the number of and amount of fees that were incurred in that 16 month period.
And that, of course, takes out that 3 months where there's no account, is that right?
Right, it excludes that.
Okay, so we're talking about January of '09 through the very beginning part of May of 2010, and then minus 3 months, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in reviewing, you can actually sit if you want for a moment. In reviewing the bank statements, did you come across to you what seemed to be a significant number of withdrawals and fees and things like that that were associated with particular addresses?
Yes.
Okay, I'm actually going to show you. $882, which I think you previously looked at. And do you recall taking a look at this?
Yes, this is the bank statement. These are the bank statements for the 7966 account.
Okay, and I want to show you actually the first page of that account. Which is 882. And we see this. Category of transactions, this would be for the record from January 20th of 2009 till February 5th of 2009. We see a category labeled purchases there. Do you see that?
Yes.
What can you tell us about the purchases from 126 on that particular page of the bank statement? We see a PCA, commerce.
Okay, so those purchases are using an ATM card or debit card, and it is at the Commerce Casino, and it gives the address of 6131 East Telegraph. It's TELEG, but it's Telegraph.
Okay. And then on the second page of that same statement, we see what's labeled as ATM withdrawals. Do you see that on 123?
Yes.
And those have the same address for the Commerce Casino, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can you explain to us why, or your understanding of what, when we look at this first page, these PCA transactions, why they would be categorized differently?
I don't know why they are different unless the transaction has a different purpose. The ATM withdrawals clearly are ATM withdrawals. Excuse me. The purchase.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The purchases, I don't know if that was to purchase an item.
Not object to speculation.
Overruled, explain.
It may be to purchase an item, or it may be some kind of withdrawal that got classified as a purchase.
Are you familiar at all with what a GCA or a PCA type machine is?
Yes.
What are they?
Well, those are companies that do, they're in the business of cash management, so that they might operate ATM machines, they might do check cashing,
If somebody were to use one of these particular machines to want to withdraw cash, are you aware as to whether or not they may have multiple options? Like if I put in, so for example, if I go to get gas and I put my card in, I can either choose credit or debit. Are you aware of those types of a situation?
As to why the transaction would show up differently?
Yes.
That could possibly be that the debit card transactions show up one way and credit card transactions show up another. But I don't know for certain.
Okay, but these contain the same address as the casino, right?
Yes, and the amounts are, those last three transactions all have the same dollar amount.
Do you have any knowledge as to whether a GCA or that third-party vendor would actually charge more than a bank for cash?
I don't have specific knowledge, but I would think so, especially if it's at a casino, that there's probably a captive audience there.
Typically, and I'm not sure if this is a question that you can answer either, are you familiar, like going back to page 2 of this particular month for January, are you familiar with banks potentially having limits as to how much cash you could take from an ATM per day?
Sure, yes.
Okay, so that's not uncommon.
No,
And could using this GCA or this other transaction company potentially be another same source of cash from your same bank account, but going around that daily withdrawal limit?
Objection, foundation, speculation.
Overruled, answer if he knows.
certainly. That would be a way to get around the bank limitations.
Okay, so in taking a look at this, you also prepared some information pertaining to cash and cash withdrawals and things like that, right?
I'm sorry, what was your question?
Sure. Did you also prepare some charts that pertain to cash transactions from the defendant's bank accounts?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as 876 and 878 and ask you if you recognize these.
Yes, I prepared them.
Okay. Are these essentially the same reports but just categorized in different ways?
Yes,
Okay, so they contain the same information?
yes.
Okay.
Hopefully the same total.
Okay. And so looking at the cash transactions by category, did you have an opportunity to go through, and this would be 876, did you have an opportunity to go through the defendant's bank records and highlight transactions that would be consistent with cash withdrawals at casinos?
Yes,
When you did that, did those categories or transactions also include the PCAs or GCAs that were in the account?
later on, can you bring the title down so I can see which schedule I'm looking at?
Sure.
Okay. If they were purchases, then I didn't list them under with cash withdrawals.
But you can't concretely say that that's actually a purchase, right?
Right, I don't know, so I gave the benefit to the defendant basically in saying they're not cash withdrawals.
Going to page 4, this one we saw started at January 23rd of 2009 to April 12th of 2010. Did you notate the number of transactions and dollar amount?
Yes.
And can you tell us what that is?
So there were 66 cash withdrawals, and they totaled $15,769.
And again, this time period would not include those 3 months where there was no bank account for you to actually look at activity from. Is that right?
Correct.
And it also does not include the activity that we just talked about, the GCAs or PCAs that could also be cash transactions at a casino.
And I would object to speculation of what they could be.
Sustained, Mr. Booth.
Well, we just talked about the fact that those GCAs could be consistent with withdrawing cash, correct?
They could be, yes.
And that's objection speculation.
Again, the objection is sustained as cumulative.
And these items are only the items that you could concretely say, when you looked at it, this is an ATM withdrawal. Is that right?
Yes.
Did you happen to add up the dollar amount of those GCAs or PCAs in addition to this amount?
I think on one of my schedules I have those
Okay.
listed.
So what was the next category of activity that you denoted?
Then, besides those withdrawals that were earlier in the schedule, these are withdrawals that were made at a bank. So some of them are ATM withdrawals, some of them might be going into the bank and actually getting money from a teller.
Okay. And on page 6, can you tell us what that amount was of just cash transactions?
Okay. Those were, the totals were, there were 44 items totaling $35,513.
Was spent, right?
Correct.
And then you have a category below that. Can you tell us what that is?
That's called other cash withdrawals. Those would,
What do you mean when you say other cash withdrawal?
those are using ATM machines that are at a third party, such as you can go to the gas station and if they have an ATM machine, you could use that ATM. Or you can go to the grocery store and if they have an ATM machine there, you could use their ATM. That would show up in this other cash withdrawals section.
And in fact, we see some cash withdrawals on the 29th of January 2009 that appear to have been in Mexico. Is that right?
Yes.
And then on page 7, did you total out what those amounts were?
Yes, there were 28 items totaling $5,861.12.
Now, I noticed that you included the speedy cash in here.
Yes. Those are actually repayments of borrowing cash.
Okay. And then what was the next category that you described as in terms of cash transactions?
The next category is called additional withdrawals at banks, and this is when someone would go into the bank and withdraw cash. So these are for a larger amount than you typically could get out of an ATM machine. I presume the defendant went in and obtained cash from a teller.
And did you have the opportunity to go back and cross-reference at all those withdrawals to see if they corresponded with withdrawals that occurred at casinos?
These are separate from the casino transactions.
Right, but I'm asking you if somebody went in and took an amount of cash, like say for example, we have on 7/10 of 2009, we see a $900 cash withdrawal, right?
Yes.
Did you have the opportunity to go back and cross-reference those with other withdrawals that we saw at casinos?
I'm not following.
Okay, so we went through this first chart, right? The first part, which is we see cash withdrawals at casinos, right?
Yes.
And these are all withdrawals that occurred specifically at a casino.
Yes.
And when looking at this particular transaction where we see that somebody just went in and took $900 out, right?
Yes.
Do you know, or did you check, and if you didn't, that's fine, but did you go back and check to see if any of these withdrawals coincided with dates that he withdrew money from the casino?
I did not do that.
Okay. And then we also see this last what was the dollar amount of that for the withdrawals?
There were 7 of them, and they totaled $12,680.
Okay, and what was the next category that you described?
These are cash checks, which we covered on an earlier schedule. It's about $40,000 total. And these are checks from earth-inspired products payable to the defendant, and rather than depositing them into a bank account, he obtained cash for them.
Okay. And if you could just, I know we covered it previously, but because this is in your chart, tell us what we're seeing at the bottom of page 9.
So with the cash checks, there were 25 of them, and the total was $40,501.85.
And so did you summarize this entire document in terms of cash transactions for the defendant?
Did I summarize it?
Yes,
Oh,
like
in
total?
In total, yes. Okay. So all these cash type transactions, there were 170 of them, and the total was $110,325.53.
And I noticed that there are parentheses around that. Are there any particular reason for that?
We talked earlier about negative in the balance column is not a good thing. That means that the account is overdrawn. But on the rest of the schedules I had, money going into the bank account is a positive amount, and money coming out is a negative amount. So these were monies coming out of the account. So it would be, I mean, if you looked at it in absolute numbers, it's the same with or without the parentheses.
Okay. And did you notice in those checks that were cashed, we talked about an exhibit 873. We talked about this previously. These were checks that were cashed simply by walking into the bank and cashing them, right?
Yes.
And did you notice any other documentation in the bank records that showed any other sources of income or checks besides these IEP or EIP checks?
Income to the defendant?
Correct.
No.
Now, were you familiar with some transactions that occurred at DataStream?
Yes.
What are those?
Okay. DataStream is similar to the cash management company that I described earlier, like Global Cash Access. But they handle, according to their website, they handle ATM transactions. They don't do, I didn't see anything about the other services, like I mentioned, where that they might bring money to the casino or take money away to deposit in the bank. It looked like they just process ATM transactions.
And do you recall what month that was?
Either
Actually,
February or April, I think, of 2009. There were 2 transactions.
let me show you 882. And this would be in the Union Bank account. And I think that's the first page of it, actually.
Yes, I see 2 transactions.
Okay, could you actually highlight those for me, please? And those transactions that you just highlighted, can you describe for us when they occurred and what the dollar amount was?
The first one's on August 12th of 2009 for $428. And the second one is on August 14th, 2009 for $321.
Okay. Now those two...
You're testing my eyes.
Oh.
It's a little light.
We could turn the lights back up for him. Those transactions that you observed, for data stream, did you factor those into the charts that you made in terms of cash withdrawals?
Let me see.
Would it help to look at your chart?
Yes,
Okay.
may I do that?
I'm going to show you 876, and if you can let me know if you actually factored that in.
No, I did not.
Okay, so that would be in addition to the other cash transactions.
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you have an opportunity to take the cash transactions that were from the defendant and categorize them based on dollar amounts for every month?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't understand that.
Sure. Did you have an opportunity to go through the records and categorize the cash transactions that occurred on a monthly basis?
You mean in a chart?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And did you also have an opportunity to look through the defendant's bank records to ascertain charges that may be associated with business activity?
Yes.
So I'm going to show you 879 and 880. And if you can tell me if you recognize these.
879 I prepared,
And then 880.
and 880 I prepared also.
Okay. And if you can explain to us what we're seeing here in 879.
I went through the defendant's bank records and looked for purchases that appeared to be, or possibly maybe supply or tool type purchases.
And were you able to determine a dollar amount for those?
Yes, I listed out each item that I could find, and that totaled $2,678.49.
And did you have an opportunity to, we see a category that's labeled merits work receipts. Can you explain what that is?
I went through the defendant's bank accounts and picked out all the checks that he received from EIP, and then I also added in the checks that we talked about earlier that were cashed from EIP, and the total of those together is merits work receipts totaling $147,188.85.
Okay, and then what percentage of the income did that provide you with based on the supply and tool purchases that you were able to ascertain based on the work receipts?
So taking line 46 and dividing it by line 47 is 2%.
And again, that, if somebody uses cash, is it a little bit difficult to ascertain what all of their expenses might be?
Without receipts, there's some kind of notations, yes.
And then, showing you what's been marked as People's Exhibit 880 for identification purposes. Can you tell us what this is?
So this is a chart showing the totals by month of all the cash withdrawal type transactions that we talked about earlier, as well as transactions at casinos. This groups them together, and it gives a monthly amount for each of those combined.
Okay, and in the month of November, December, and January, when there wasn't an actual bank account, How did you fill that in?
So there were, these were cash checks during that time period.
Okay, so that chart that we observed before, you just took the dollar amounts and plugged those in?
Right, the total was about $40,500, and here I've broken it down by month.
And you had mentioned earlier, you have an obligation to be objective when you review the data, is that right?
Yes,
And so in doing so, and looking at the charts and things that you prepared in this particular case, you utilized what information?
the basis for most of my work is bank records.
Just numbers.
Right, numbers, dates, amounts. I just picked them off the records and made summaries.
Okay. Nothing further, Your Honor?
So a little bit after 4, I'm guessing the defense has more than 10 or 15 minutes of cross.
Yes, sir.
Lucky guess on my part. So we'll go ahead and take our evening recess then at this time and let you start fresh tomorrow morning. 9:30 tomorrow morning, I'm afraid we'll need you back tomorrow morning. Okay. We'll see everyone back 9:30 tomorrow morning. Again, keep in mind the admonitions not to form or express any opinions about the case, not to discuss the case. Again, that means not discussing anything about the case, any of the witnesses' testimony, exhibits, parties, or attorneys. And we'll see everyone back at 9:30 tomorrow morning.